My name is Lisa, and I guess I should start by telling you about my family. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either, just your typical middle-class family trying to make ends meet. My parents, Mom and Dad, worked regular jobs, and I had a younger sister named Michelle who was always getting into some kind of trouble. From the time I was old enough to understand money, I knew our family had to watch every penny. Dad worked at the local factory, and Mom did part-time cleaning jobs when she could find them. They never complained, but I could see the stress on their faces when bills came in the mail. "Lisa, you're such a good kid," Mom would say when she saw me doing homework at the kitchen table. "You work so hard in school." I did work hard. I had to. I knew that good grades were my ticket out of this situation, not just for me, but to help my family too. When I turned 16 and could legally work, I didn't even hesitate. I walked into the local cafe downtown and asked if they needed help. "You ever worked in food service before?" the manager asked me. "No, but I'm a fast learner and I really need this job," I told him. He hired me on the spot. 20 hours a week after school and on weekends. The pay wasn't much, minimum wage plus whatever tips I could scrape together, but it was something. Every 2 weeks when I got my paycheck, I'd keep maybe $20 or $30 for myself and give the rest to my parents. Michelle thought I was crazy. She was 2 years younger and spent her time hanging out with friends, worrying about boys, doing typical teenage stuff. "Why are you working so hard?" she'd ask me. "Mom and Dad can handle their own problems." "Because we're a family," I'd tell her, "families help each other." She'd just roll her eyes and go back to whatever she was doing on her phone. The thing is, even while working all those hours, I managed to keep my grades up. I studied late at night after my shifts, did homework during my lunch breaks at school, and somehow pulled off a 4.0 GPA. My guidance counselor called me into her office during my senior year. "Lisa, you have a real shot at getting a full scholarship to the state college," she told me. "Your grades are perfect, and with your work experience, you'd be an ideal candidate." I couldn't believe it. A full scholarship meant my parents wouldn't have to pay a dime for my college education. I knew they had been slowly saving money in a special account for my college fund. I'd overheard them talking about it late at night, discussing how they might need to take out loans to cover what they couldn't save. When I applied for the scholarship and got it, my parents were thrilled. I was excited too, and honestly, part of me hoped that maybe they'd use some of that saved money to do something nice for me. Maybe buy me a car so I wouldn't have to take the bus everywhere, or get me a new laptop for college, or even just take a family vacation for once. A few weeks later, I came home from work to find a brand new SUV in our driveway. "Whose car is that?" I asked. "Ours," Mom said excitedly. "Since we don't have to pay for your college anymore, we decided to finally get a reliable vehicle." I stood there looking at that shiny new SUV, and I felt something I'd never felt before toward my parents: disappointment. Not because they bought themselves something nice, they deserved it. But because it never occurred to them to share any of that relief with me, the person who had made it possible. After years of helping them, after earning this scholarship that saved them thousands, I thought they might acknowledge my contribution in some small way. "That's great," I managed to say, trying to hide how I really felt. College was great, but it was also exhausting. I found another part-time job at a cafe near campus, thinking I'd just earned some spending money for myself this time. But it didn't take long before my parents started calling. "Lisa, honey, the water heater broke and we need to replace it," Mom called to tell me one month. "Could you help us out with a couple $100?" "I thought you had the college savings," I said. "Well, we used most of that for the SUV down payment, and we're a little tight right now." I sent them the money. I told myself it was just this once, just to help them through a rough patch. But then Dad called the next month. "Lisa, we're behind on the electric bill. Could you spare maybe $150? And then it was the phone bill. Then groceries when Dad had to take a few unpaid sick days. Each time, they'd call with some emergency, and each time, I'd send them what I could from my cafe job earnings. "It's just temporary," I kept telling myself. Once they get back on their feet, this will stop. But it didn't stop, it became a pattern. Every month, there was something. And every month, I'd send them money because that's what families do, right? They help each other. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Michelle had graduated high school by then but decided college wasn't for her. At 18, she moved out of our parents' house and was trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. She never offered to help with any of these family emergencies, and honestly, nobody expected her to. 4 years later, I graduated with my degree in finance and landed a job in the financial department of a big company. Once I started working, everything changed. My salary was way better than anything I'd ever imagined, and suddenly I could actually afford to help my family in ways I never could before. What started as occasional help during college quickly turned into something much bigger. "Lisa, we're really struggling with the mortgage payment this month," Dad called me about 3 weeks into my new job. "The factory cut my hours again, and we're short about $800. "How much is your mortgage?" I asked. $1,800 a month, he said. "I know it's a lot to ask, but could you maybe help us out just this once?" I looked at my bank account. With my new salary, I could actually cover their entire mortgage payment and still have plenty left over for my own expenses. It felt amazing to finally be in a position to really help them. "Don't worry about it, Dad," I said, "I'll take care of the whole payment this month." The relief in his voice was incredible. "Lisa, you're a lifesaver. We'll pay you back as soon as things get better." But things didn't get better. Or maybe they did, but the calls kept coming anyway. The next month, it was the mortgage again, plus the utility bills. "The electric and gas bills are really high this month," Mom explained. "It's been so cold, and you know how expensive heating is. We're looking at about $1,000 total." I paid it, and then I paid it the next month too. And the month after that. Meanwhile, Michelle was having her own struggles. She'd moved out of our parents' house right after high school and was bouncing between different apartments and jobs, never quite finding her footing. "Lisa, I hate to ask, but I'm really desperate," she called me one evening. "My roommate moved out without notice, and I can't afford the rent on my own. It's $1,000 a month, and if I don't pay it, I'll get evicted." So I started sending Michelle $1,000 a month for rent too. What had started as temporary help was now costing me $3,800 every month, $1,800 for my parents' mortgage, $1,000 for their utilities, and $1,000 for Michelle's rent. Plus there were always little things. Mom needed money for groceries when Dad's paycheck was short. Michelle needed help with her car payment. Dad needed money for some medical bills that insurance didn't cover. "This is just until they get stable," I kept telling myself, "it's not permanent." But months turned into years. I got promoted to head of the financial department, which came with an even better salary, so I could afford to keep helping them. The weird thing was, nobody ever talked about when this arrangement might end, it just became normal. Then I met David. He was sweet, funny, and worked in marketing at a different company. We started dating, and things got serious pretty quickly. When we got married a year later, he made it clear that he wasn't thrilled about the arrangement, but he accepted it. "Look, we both have good jobs," he said. "We don't have kids yet or a mortgage of our own. If you want to help your family, we can afford it. But maybe we should think about setting some boundaries eventually." The arrangement continued for another year after David and I got married. Every month, the same payments went out. Every month, there were additional requests for help with this or that. My family had gotten used to having me as their financial safety net. But then something happened that changed everything. I got pregnant. David was over the moon. "This is amazing, Lisa. We're going to be parents." I was excited too, but I was also worried. Babies are expensive. We'd need to buy furniture, clothes, diapers, formula. We'd have medical bills. And if I wanted to take maternity leave, we'd be living on just David's salary for a while. "We need to start saving money," David said. "And we need to think about our priorities." Maybe it's time to have a conversation with your parents and sister about gradually reducing the help so we can focus on our baby. I knew he was right, but the thought of that conversation made me sick to my stomach. Still, it had to be done. I called my parents first. "Mom, Dad, I have some great news," I said. "David and I are having a baby." The silence on the other end was not what I expected. "Oh," Mom finally said, "you're still so young. Maybe you should think about this more carefully. You don't really need a baby right now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I'm married, I have a good job, we want this baby." "But babies are so expensive," Dad chimed in. "And you're already helping us so much. How are you going to manage both?" That's when I had to tell them, "Actually, that's something we need to talk about. David and I are going to have to cut back on the help we've been giving you. We'll still help in emergencies, but we need to focus on our own family now." Mom didn't say anything else, she just hung up. I called Michelle next, thinking she might be more supportive. "Hey, Michelle, guess what? I'm pregnant." "Seriously," she said. "Lisa, that's really selfish of you." "Selfish? How is having a baby selfish?" "Because now you're going to cut off my rent money, aren't you? I've been counting on that money. My whole budget is based on you helping me. I can't just suddenly lose $1,000 a month because you decided to get pregnant. Michelle, you're 26 years old. Don't you think it's time you figured out how to pay your own rent?" "That's easy for you to say. You've always had everything handed to you." And then she hung up too. I sat there staring at my phone, completely shocked. These were not the reactions I had expected. I thought they'd be happy about becoming grandparents and an aunt. I thought they'd understand that I needed to prioritize my own family now. I figured they might be disappointed about the money, but surely they'd realize this was the right thing to do. I told myself they just needed time to process the news. Once they calmed down and really thought about it, they'd understand. They'd be excited about the baby. They'd figure out how to manage their finances without me. This was just their initial shock talking. The day after those phone calls, I went ahead and canceled all the automatic payments I'd been making to my family. The mortgage payment to my parents, their utility bills, and Michelle's rent money, all of it stopped. I figured once they realized I was serious, they'd come around and we could have a proper conversation about this whole situation. But weeks went by, and nobody called. Not my parents, not Michelle. Nothing. The silence was deafening. "Maybe they're just processing everything," David said when I told him how worried I was. "Give them some time." "It's been almost 2 months," I said. "Don't you think they'd at least call to check on how I'm feeling? To ask about the baby?" David looked uncomfortable. "Lisa, I hate to say this, but maybe they're more upset about the money than about becoming grandparents." I didn't want to believe that, but the evidence was pretty clear. 2 months of complete silence from people who used to call me at least twice a week asking for help with something. Then I came home from work one day to find a thick envelope in our mailbox. Official-looking papers with a law firm's return address. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It was a lawsuit. My parents and Michelle were suing me for $4,000 a month in ongoing financial support. "David," I called out, my voice cracking, "you need to see this." He read over the papers, his face getting more and more incredulous. "They're actually suing you, their own daughter?" According to the lawsuit, my parents claimed they were retired and had no other sources of income. They said I had to keep paying their mortgage and utilities because they couldn't afford it on their own. Michelle's claim said she had budgeted her entire life around my monthly payments and couldn't survive without them. She claimed she had work problems and that losing my support would leave her homeless. "I can't believe this," I said, sinking onto the couch. "They didn't even try to talk to me about it. They just went straight to lawyers." "And look at this," David said, pointing to another section. "They filed this 2 months ago. Right after you told them about the pregnancy. They've been planning this the whole time." That hurt more than anything. While I was sitting at home worrying about them, hoping they'd call, they were busy plotting legal action against me. "We need a lawyer," David said. "I know someone who specializes in family disputes. Let me call him." The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was honest with us from the beginning. "This is an unusual case," he said. "Adult children aren't typically legally obligated to support their parents or siblings. But we need to investigate their actual financial situation before we can build a strong defense." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, if they're claiming poverty and inability to work, we need to verify that. Something doesn't add up here. You said you stopped sending money 2 months ago, but they've been paying their bills somehow, right? Plus they hired lawyers, which isn't cheap." He was right. If they were really as broke as they claimed, how were they managing without my help? And how could they afford legal fees? But that wasn't the worst of it. A few days later, I started seeing posts on social media. My mom had written a long Facebook post about how her ungrateful daughter had abandoned the family in their time of need. "We raised Lisa to be better than this," the post said. "We sacrificed so much for her education and success, and now that we need help in our retirement, she's turned her back on us. Some children forget where they came from." Michelle had liked the post and added her own comment, "It's true. Lisa got successful and decided she was too good for her own family, really sad." My phone started ringing constantly. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all calling to ask what was going on. Why had I stopped helping my parents? How could I be so cruel to my own family? "Lisa, your mother is really upset," my Aunt Carol said. "She says you cut them off completely." What happened? I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to explain the whole situation to every relative who called. I didn't want to defend myself or make my family look bad. So I just said I couldn't talk about it and hung up. The stress was killing me. I was barely sleeping, and I was constantly worried about the baby. My doctor had already warned me about keeping my stress levels down, but how could I relax with all this going on? Then things got even worse. My boss called me into his office one morning. "Lisa, I need to ask you about something," he said, looking very serious. "We received an anonymous call yesterday. Someone claimed you've been stealing money from the company. They said you recently bought an apartment with stolen funds." My heart stopped. "What? That's completely false. I would never steal anything." "I didn't think so," he said. "I've known you for years, and you've always been completely trustworthy. But the security department has to investigate any allegations like this. They'll need to audit your department thoroughly." I knew immediately who had made that call. This had to be my family's doing. They were trying to destroy my reputation and my career because I wouldn't keep giving them money. "I understand you have to investigate," I told my boss. "But I want you to know that I'm going through a difficult family situation right now, and I think this is connected to that." He nodded sympathetically. "Just focus on doing your job, and let the security team handle their investigation. I'm sure this will all get cleared up quickly." But the damage was already done. Word spread around the office that there was an investigation happening in the finance department. People started looking at me differently, whispering when I walked by. Some of my colleagues who used to be friendly suddenly seemed distant. The stress was overwhelming. I was dealing with a lawsuit, social media attacks, family members calling to criticize me, and now my job was in jeopardy. All because I had decided to prioritize my unborn child over continuing to financially support my adult family members. A week later, I ended up in the hospital. The stress had caused complications with my pregnancy, and the doctors were worried I might lose the baby. I had to stay for a week while they monitored me and the baby's condition. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized just how far my family was willing to go to keep me under their control. They weren't just upset about losing the money, they were actively trying to destroy my life. 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital, Mr. Peterson called with some shocking news. "Lisa, you're not going to believe what we found," he said. "Your parents aren't poor at all. 4 years ago, they won $400,000 in the lottery. After taxes, they put the money in an investment account and have been living off the interest this whole time." I couldn't speak for a moment. Are you serious? Dead serious. They've got bank statements showing regular dividend payments. They could easily afford their mortgage and bills without your help. They've been lying to you and to the court. When the trial started, my parents came in with their sob story ready. Mom sat in the witness chair looking frail and helpless. Lisa was our only source of income, she testified. We're retired now, and we can't work anymore. Without her help, we can't pay our mortgage or even buy groceries. Dad nodded along. The girl just abandoned us when we needed her most. We raised her, supported her through school, and this is how she repays us. Michelle's testimony was even more dramatic. Lisa ruined my entire life plan, she said. I budgeted everything around her monthly payments. I had to cancel my vacation, change my whole lifestyle. My successful sister should be helping me get on my feet. Then it was our lawyer's turn. Mr. Peterson stood up with a stack of bank statements. Your Honor, the plaintiffs have been lying to this court, he said. Lisa has already given her family over $120,000 over the years. She was under no legal obligation to do so, it was purely voluntary. And the plaintiffs are not poor. They have $400,000 in an investment account from lottery winnings. The look on Michelle's face was priceless. She had no idea about the lottery money. What? Michelle jumped up from her seat. You won the lottery? I asked you for help with my apartment deposit, and you said you didn't have any money. I've been taking money from Lisa because you told me you couldn't help me. Michelle, sit down, Dad hissed. No. You made me beg Lisa for money while you had $400,000 sitting in the bank? You let me humiliate myself for years? Michelle turned to the judge. Your Honor, I want to drop my case against Lisa. I don't want anything to do with my parents anymore. Security had to escort Michelle out because she was yelling so loudly at our parents. It was a complete disaster for their case. The judge dismissed the lawsuit immediately and ordered my parents to pay all the legal costs. Mr. Peterson then filed a harassment lawsuit against them for the social media posts and the false report to my company. Your Honor, Mr. Peterson said, these people have been stalking and harassing my pregnant client. They've tried to destroy her reputation at work with false accusations. We're asking for a restraining order. The judge agreed. My parents were banned from contacting me or coming near me. By the time all the legal stuff was finished, I was ready to give birth. The stress had finally lifted, and I delivered a healthy baby boy. We named him Ryan. The internal investigation at work had cleared me of any wrongdoing, and my boss was very apologetic about the whole situation. We knew it was nonsense from the beginning, he told me. You've always been completely trustworthy. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Everything was finally getting back to normal. David and I were enjoying being new parents, and I was planning to take a full year of maternity leave to focus on Ryan. Then, about 6 months after Ryan was born, something unexpected happened. A courier delivered a package to our house. Inside was a beautiful set of baby clothes and a card that said, "For Ryan, with love from Aunt Michelle." An hour later, my phone rang. It was Michelle. Lisa, I'm so sorry, she said, and I could tell she was crying. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I feel terrible. I was so stupid and selfish. Michelle. I started. No, let me say this, she interrupted. I found out about Mom and Dad's lottery money, and I realized they'd been manipulating both of us for years. They didn't want us to have a close relationship because then we might compare notes and figure out their lies. She was probably right about that. I got a good job, Michelle continued. I'm paying my own rent now, and I promise I'll never ask you for money again. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd really like to try to have a relationship with you and meet my nephew. I was quiet for a long time. Part of me wanted to forgive her immediately, but I'd been hurt too badly. I need time to think about it, Michelle, I finally said. I understand, she said, take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I love you. Meanwhile, I heard through relatives that my parents had blown through most of their investment money paying legal fees and were struggling financially. Dad had to go back to work, and they were having a hard time managing without my help. They'd also completely stopped talking to Michelle after she sided with me at the trial. The funny thing is, now that I'm not sending them thousands of dollars every month, David and I have plenty of money for Ryan's needs. We've got his college fund started, we've paid off our own debts, and we're even thinking about buying a bigger house. I'm taking a full year off work to be with Ryan, and when I go back, we'll hire a nanny. For the first time in my adult life, I'm spending my money on my own family instead of supporting people who were perfectly capable of supporting themselves. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever hear from my parents again. Part of me hopes they'll eventually apologize, but I'm not holding my breath. As for Michelle, I'm still thinking about whether to give her another chance. Maybe someday, but not yet.